and that type of call volume, what's your anticipated plan on covering all those if mutual aid isn't available?
I didn't hear the last part of that.
What is your anticipated plan to cover that kind of call volume if mutual aid is not available?
What is our plan to cover that call volume if mutual aid is not available? That's a big scenario there. I mean, like I say, we have 3 ambulances. We're providing the coverage now. We haven't had any issues other than the one day where we got hit with 5 calls all at one time. And we've had one other instance where District 2 had to come over because all of our ambulances was out. But otherwise, we have been pretty self-sufficient and have responded to and taken care of every call that we were toned up for in this area.
Well, and again, mutual aid is always going to be available. The issue is where's the box coming from?
Yes. We have mutual aid.
Shirts or Seguin or wherever.
We have mutual aid agreements with every agency in this county. We have mutual aid agreements with surrounding counties such as Gonzales or Nixon, Seguin, Karnes County. Okay? So, in the event, which doesn't happen very often, in the event that there wasn't an ambulance that was available, there may be an ambulance coming from Karnes County. There may be a Acadian ambulance coming from Bear County. It just depends on where the call is at and what's going on. It may be a delayed response, meaning the ambulance that's clearing the hospital may be able to get to wherever it needs to go faster than what the mutual aid ambulance that's coming from out of county is. I mean, so it's a fluid situation, and we address those needs as those needs come up.
What do you think your call volume is percentage-wise of calls that you need more than one ambulance? I think they'd be fairly rare because it'd be traffic accidents where you have too many patients, because an ambulance can carry more than one.
Yeah.
Or a bad event.
I don't know the percentage, but I would say it's only maybe 15–20% right now of calls that would require 2 ambulances, which would be like a motor vehicle accident or something like that. But even when we have those motor vehicle accidents, our policy is if we have 2 patients, or multiple patients as far as that goes, we will transport 1 stable and 1 end stable in 1 ambulance. And if all we have is 2 patients and they're both linked in the same facility, we're going to transport them all at once. We're not going to take 2 ambulances out of service to transport 2 patients. Our goal is to get the patients off the scene, to the hospital, and back in service ASAP.
Going back to that question about the call volume, you said in 2016 there was 400 calls. Well, the 2 months you had, it was almost 100 calls, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe in December.
So it's 56 and 40 something. Yeah, well that's 100 calls. Well, that would come out to 600 a year, and you haven't had any problems over the 2 months you've been doing it.
No.
So,
one other thing, there's systems that the state has set up also that the sheriff, the county dispatcher can call. MedCom is one system, STRAC is another, that if additional ambulances are needed into an area, they can dispatch what they call MedCom, and that's where Katie and Shirts, all those ambulances start coming from. So it's a state deal also set up. There's a lot to the EMS system.
It's a very
So
complex
Minor
system.
Acadian could respond
Yes.
from Floresville, because that'd be their closest location.
We're
Never
going to
seen it from the
use,
closest available appropriate responding agency. Of course, there's physics and geography involved. And, you know, getting around Travis County is not so easy. I don't know how it is for y'all, but we've got a big lake going across the middle of it. And you can't get across it except at certain points. So we call Williamson County a lot into northwest Travis County. We call Hayes County or Burnett County in. Burnett County and Hayes County call us over. It just depends on where it's at.
Would you do something? Growth potential.
And the billing discrepancy?
billing discrepancy. I guess you're referring to the shortfall. The shortfall came in with the state indigent. Well, first off, let's just paint the picture, the whole thing here, okay? As I've said, there's lots of unknowns, and EMS is very hard to predict as far as the revenues. For one, you can't predict how many EMS calls. I mean, yeah, you can I guess you can sort of kind of predict how many calls you're gonna get, but you don't know how many are gonna be transports, how many are gonna be no transports, how many are gonna have commercial insurance, how many are gonna have Medicaid, Medicare. And then the other part of that is you don't know when the federal government's gonna decide to cut any of that, okay? So that's problem number one. And so with that said, yes, and whenever we start talking about the shortfall up here, back to the IRS slide, yes, there was a shortfall in that. I think we budgeted $220,000 for revenues for that year.
Based on what our billing company told us, based on what the historic averages were, and what they thought we would be able to collect from the state.
Whenever we go and put together our budget, it's not just David or ESD commissioners pulling numbers out of the air. I contact the billing office, and based off of our historical data, the trends that we're on right now, what do you think is a good conservative number to budget for billing receivables? And for that particular year, we budgeted $220,000. Well, by the end of the fiscal year, we didn't get $220,000. I believe it came in right around $150,000, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? And so then we're like, what happened? What went wrong? And so we started backtracking. Well, we had lots of no transports. You know, we budgeted for X number of calls, but again, you can't predict which ones are going to be transports, which ones are going to be no transports. And over 50% of our call volume were no transports. And no transports, there's no billing. Okay? You're not going to recoup any of that cost. The other side of that is the indigent money. It was our first year. First off, last year when we applied for the indigent money, there was only about 20 or 30 agencies, don't hold me to that number, but like 20 or 30 agencies that had applied for the indigent care program because it was fairly new to the EMS side. With speaking with our billing office, and after we finally got approved from the state to submit for indigent claims, we were only approved on our first year to submit for 7 months. We're speaking with our billing office as far as how many claims we're going to qualify to go to indigent. A conservative number they came up with was around $130,000. I'm sorry, $150,000. We submitted a report with the motions there. We received word from the state that you're approved for $136,000. Great. Now then we keep rolling. We're waiting for our check to come in, and about 30 days before we were to receive the check, we get notification from the state that, well, they found some discrepancies as far as, not discrepancies, but addition, not discrepancy, in the reporting as far as the addition and all that, as far as how they calculate it, and
Not us, how they?
on them. It dropped it down to $86,000. Well, now then, it went from a budget amount of 150 down to 86. But then the other crappy part about it, the state keeps 33% of that. So out of that 86, they keep their 33%, and so then we got a check for $56,000, which was another budgeted shortfall. So now then, do you understand where the shortfall was there and how the taxes for that year?
And it's a new program,
It's
so
a
they're
new
still
program.
working out the bugs, they're still trying to figure out exactly how it's going to work.
And every year we go through training. We just went through our training to submit for this past year's indigent claims, and those reports are due in March.
But you said at the last hearing that you had the funds to pay the IRS as soon as.
We do.
you know,
We still do.
yeah.
It's
So-
your tag. It's set
So it's a
aside there.
non-issue.
It's a non-issue.
We just got to have the IRS tell us the number. I mean, I'm all for just paying them whatever they say, but I don't know that anybody wants us to do that with taxpayer dollars, especially when we know that they're wrong. And I'll be honest with you, the guy I talked to yesterday was very frustrating. Let me tell you a little story about this whole IRS deal. We knew we had a problem 7 months ago, 8 months ago, maybe a little bit longer. And so I began to initiate the contact with the IRS. All right? The only way you can do that is the 1-800-429-8040 or whatever number it is. Okay? Let alone that I was on hold at taxpayers' expense for an average of 4 hours waiting for my turn in line. Okay? I called them, and when I finally got hold of them, they told me at the main number, we can't talk to you, it's already with a revenue officer. And I said, well, give me the revenue officer's name. Now I have somebody to talk to instead of just somebody, over at IRS. I said, we can't give you that. Here's the number you can call in San Antonio. So I immediately called it, and I got the handshake from the fax machine. So it took me another 4 hours the next day to call him back and get the correct number. Yes, it was in the correct sequence of numbers, but it was not the correct number. So then they said, I'm sorry, they gave you the wrong number. Here's the correct number. So I call that number, and guess what? That number's not answered. It's an answering machine that says a revenue officer will get back in touch with you at some point in the future. Well, that went for a week with no calls back and me continuing to call, and I still got the same number. So what I did is the number I was supposed to call was 1-210-841-2410. So I started at 1-210-841-2400 and started dialing numbers until at 2437 I hit somebody. At 2437 I hit a revenue officer, but he said, oh yeah, I see you're in the system. And by the way, we've had no notice of anything that it's at a revenue officer or anybody to contact or any way to resolve the problem other than just pay. Okay? And so I talked to this guy and he says, I can't talk to you about it, and they won't talk to me, but I have to send them over my what's called CAF's number as an attorney so I can represent individuals before the IRS. But I talked with him for about 20 minutes, and finally he said, look, I'm not telling you this, but here's your revenue officer, and here's his number. Okay? I don't tell anybody I did that. Okay? And here's the supervisor's number. So then I call that number, and guess who's on vacation for 2 weeks? Okay? So I call the supervisor, and I get hold of her the next day. And she says he'll be gone for another 2 weeks, or another week and a half at this point, and when he gets back, we'll handle it. Okay? He didn't call me back even though I was calling him for another week. And, he's looking at his computer, and he's told me this. He said, we don't, because they're actually seizing some of our federal money at this point, and they've seized an amount of that. And so we know what they've seized. He does not know what they've seized, because that doesn't go onto his computer screen for at least 60 days. So that's the issue we're dealing with, is tell us the number, we'll pay it. Okay, so I want everybody to know, and I'm sorry if I'm getting frustrated, but I dealt with it again today for 2 hours. And he can't even tell me, okay, if we were late, because he says, it looks like you got some failure to file. And I said, no, here's all of our receipts. We have one that we filed late, I think. And he says, well, no, I'm showing 6. So now I've had them, Barbara and all these people, sending me all these documents today so I can send it to them again saying, here's when we paid. And here's when we filed. And there's 3 different things: failure to pay, failure to file, and failure to deposit. Okay? So we're still working through all that. Plus the interest racks up on a daily basis on all of this. So at some point, I'm going to be talking about, can you waive some of this so the taxpayers don't have to pay that too? By the way, we've been dealing with you for 9 months, and we still don't have a resolution, and the interest is still cranking. So I just want you to understand, I'm very frustrated with this, and Ken Campbell can make a lot of money in different ways, but I'm about to burn up any waiver I'll get on the penalties and fees just on my attorney's fees. At some point, this becomes a zero-sum game that I don't want to pay or play, but until they tell us the actual number, which we'll write a check for, we can't even write a check. So that's the summary of that whole deal.
It's very frustrating. I call Ken about every week, can we get this taken care of? Can we get this taken care of?
To help avoid this in the future, so y'all don't have to go through the frustration again, is there any anticipated training for your medics on the box as far as collecting insurance information so that way you can have clear-cut billing?
Well, I mean, we have a process now. We have a quality assurance which includes not only patient care but also the demographic side of it. Reports, once they're done, they go into QA. And then from QA, they go into the admin's box to where she goes through and views and makes sure that all the demographic information is collected, and a demographic sheet is collected from the hospital. Should that sheet not have been obtained, or for some reason, the hospital didn't put any information on that sheet, then Barbara here will take and notify the hospital and request the demographic sheet that has all that information on there to attach it to the run sheet and send it on the bill. We do everything that we can to try to possibly improve and recoup as much as we can on the billing side of it.
But the point is you collect all the demographic information
Yes,
that
we
you
do
get at the
collect all the
time.
demographic.
Obviously, if the
It's
patient
just-
by himself and unconscious,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
And
probably not
those-
getting any demographic
And the
information.
unknowns
You're
that you
gonna
saw
have
up
to
there,
investigate.
those unknowns that you saw up there may have been unconscious or, some other way that they could not provide that information. But there are occasions where we go to a hospital, you've never been there before, and like SAMC, for example, they don't provide all that information on their face sheets, at least while the ambulance is there. But once they've gone through a meeting and been checked in, several days later, Barbara can fax over a request and usually get that information to be added to the report before it goes through the billing process.
Do you only get the information from the hospitals, or do you try to get the information from the patients or
Both.
the family members?
Both. Now, just because we get the information from the patient, we're also getting a face sheet on every single patient.
You've got to show them where the transport was and all the things that were done.
Yes.
And they,
Because, there's
hospital's
also
gotta say,
signatures
yeah, that
involved.
happened.
The patient has to sign, hospital, the receiving facility has to sign, the medics have to sign. It's a long process just on the billing side of it before it even gets to billing. Yes, sir.
Based on everything I have heard, everything that you've presented, every question that's been asked, I, for one, am in favor of it. I'd like to know, at a gut level, understanding that you guys are gonna incur, what'd you say, $25,000 to have an election?
Well, 10 to
10 to 12,000, I think it was. I'd like to know how the board feels at a gut level.
Well, they can't answer you, and this is a public hearing, so what as we were at the last meeting, one of the things I said is show up. We don't care if you're for it or against it. We have no dog in this fight, okay? We've been asked by 50 of your fellow residents, actually 68, I believe.
Well, it's a total of 87 that signed the petition.
87, to entertain this. As the attorney, and I think my board, I'm speaking for my board here, we're not really interested in going down a road of $25,000 to get handed our hat by you guys not wanting to join. And it's double secret probation. We got to say yes in ESD 3, and y'all got to say yes out here, okay? We're not sure exactly where our taxpayers are. We think they're fine. But the point is that we need you to tell us. And if a majority of you or a big bunch of you say we're against it, we're going to fight it, we're probably not going down that road, folks. We're going to decide tonight, because tomorrow is the last date on order an election for May. So we're here really to hear from y'all. And then we will make our decision. And if y'all tell us no tonight, we wrap this up and go home.
So are y'all gonna ask for a show of hands tonight?
Well, I mean, y'all, what it is a public hearing, and the way a public hearing works, we've made our presentation, is y'all can have, we'll say 1 minute, so we're not here forever, and you can tell us how stupid we are, plenty in 1 minute. But if you have something to say, we'll just take it in order, we'll just start here, and y'all go down and raise your hand, and if you want to make, I'm for it or I'm against it, to help us get an idea, that would be fine too. Because again, we're not trying to go pick a fight with anybody. We've been asked and we're going through the process. But we don't want to go through the whole process if y'all aren't interested. So,
I'm gonna start it off. My wife and I are for it. That's 2.
We're for it.
well, if you want to raise your hands, then we'll do it that way. How many are against it? Okay. Are there any questions we can answer for you?
I just think they tried to do it too fast, I think.
Well-
More research, and there was documentation available, because it just came out with the new tax roll back in January, with the voter ID card.
Well, yeah, but the tax rolls, the appraisal rolls are actually established back on July 25th of last year. Okay, we won't have a new one until July 25th of this year. So, but the point is, and I'll try to answer the rush thing, because there's no rush other than what the law puts on us. And what the law puts on us is when we get a petition, then we have to delay for 30 days, do notices in the paper, get notices out, have this public hearing, so there's already a 30-day delay built in there. We got the petition, what, beginning of January?
30 days ago.
30 days ago, or a little more than 30 days ago. So we have to call this public hearing. The 16th tomorrow is the last day to order it for May. If we don't order it by tomorrow, it will not get ordered until, it will not happen until November, which puts us back even further. ESD 4 cannot go until November, assuming that they get a petition in. And I'm not ragging on ESD 4, it doesn't even exist, okay? But my point is there's no rush other than the law. We have to call an election 91 days, 92 days before the actual election in May. The 16th is that day. If we want to try and hit May, we got to go. And we literally scramble. We have been scrambling to, we didn't know that we would be able, when we got the petition, to hit the deadline of the 16th. So we're not rushing it. If it's rushed at all, it's the law. And I'm sorry if you feel that it's rushed, but it's just how it is. Yes,
I
ma'am.
just want to thank the taxpayers of the ESD for helping us out of the pickle that we're in. Beautiful things about how y'all are operating, and we thank you for saving our lives, literally. Thank you very much, and yes, we're for this election. I am.
Any more public comment? Oh, yes, sir.
I've got 3 properties in District 3, 3 ESD 3. Are my taxes going to increase to carry Livonia for the year?
Well, they can't, fortunately for you. I mean, unless your appraisal goes up. We're already at the maximum 10 cents constitutionally that we can charge per $100 valuation. And just to help y'all understand that, for each $100,000 the value of your property is, you pay $100 a year in taxes at 10 cents per $100 valuation. So if you have a $100,000 house, you pay, or property, you pay $100. Okay, so you can do the math real quick. Yours can't go up.
It might go down.
Yeah, it can go down, that's right.
Because I don't have a whole lot more money.
Well, in 2020, not in 2018, not in 2019. So,
I think they should go
anybody else like to make a comment or say anything?
ESD 3 can pull out of Livonia and give us a 30-day notice, is that correct? You can give us 30 days, and if you're not, if this isn't working for you?
Well, yeah, that's how it's written in the contract, 30-day notice is all that's required.
Keep that in mind.
For now, until September 30th?
Well, anytime, I mean, it's written into the contract.
The contract
county-
goes through September 30th, that's the end of the fiscal year for the county.
But I mean,
It's the same.
if it goes to an election and it passes, they can't then.
No.
No, and we're
Okay, I'm like,
hoping,
let's don't get that
and we're hoping that the building revenue will cover that gap in funding, in revenue sources until 2020. But more to the point, we're hoping that the county will still, and the county, I think, pays basically all the EMS departments the same amount of money, $26,500 each. Is that correct?
I think some may get.
Well, the reason it's got the 30-day out, and the county commissioners did it that way, was in case they were able to get Livonia EMS back up and running, they could get out of this contract in 30 days. And that was why the county commissioners did it that way.
And this is, when did we start this contract?
November 28th.
See, we had not budgeted for this. Our budget was already done back in September of 2017. And I can remember being in San Antonio getting a call from David saying, hey, guess what just happened? And I'm like, good Lord, okay, what's going on? He goes, well, can we go over there and help? Yeah, we can. All right, and that's where we got involved.
Has District 3 currently had to put any funds towards the service, or has the money that Livonia and the county pay covered the service?
Right now, we are still operating off of what the city and the county has provided in funds.
Aren't you getting pretty close to being out of that fund of coverage?
Well, I mean, when we end the month, this month here, we'll know exactly where we are. Last month, we were about halfway through. The other side of that is we are getting right in line to where we will start seeing some of those receivables on the billing side of it, which will, at least we're confident that it's going to sustain it through the end of the fiscal year. That's exactly what I mean by sustain. I mean, there's no room there for improving or upgrading or whatever else. It just carries it over. You know what I mean?
And this is an arcane point, correct me if I'm wrong here too, but whomever, assuming that Livonia EMS is not contracted with by ESD4, whomever comes in, especially if they try to start their own, for Medicare and Medicaid, you can set it all up, but until you get your first Medicare or Medicaid patient, you cannot bill for anything.
Well, I mean,
And then you got 180 days to wait. So we're coming up on that 180-day window to start seeing where we're at.
to take it a step further, you have to apply for those numbers, your Medicare, Medicaid, your commercial.
Yeah, that's right. You can't even apply until you have your first patient.
Well, I mean, no, you can apply for it, but it takes time to apply. You're looking at least 6 months before you even get that number. And, you may have ran calls if it was there, but it's gonna be 6 months before you're even able to bill anything for it.
The other question is, fire department agreed that they're gonna let y'all house her, or you gonna have to?
We're still working that out. I mean, I don't know if anybody from District 1 wants to comment on that.
We haven't done a formal interlocal agreement at this point, have we? Did we do it?
One other one.
I'm sorry, say the question again.
He's asking if District 1 has agreed to allow us to house the Linnell station.
No, basically at this point in time, it's a courtesy thing, it is all that we have done.
I represent
Basically,
ESD
the way
1.
that we look at it in District 1 is that the fire stations and equipment that is there is basically property of the people that are in District 1. And right now, District 1 is hurting for an ambulance. So we gave them as a courtesy the ability to come put an ambulance in our existing station. So really, it's the people's property. We're basically taking money out of one hand and putting it in the other pocket is all that we're doing. So at this particular point in time, it's no expense to us whatsoever.
We will have a formal interlocal agreement.
Now,
at
in
some
due
point.
time, yes, if this goes through, then there would probably be a discussion at one of our board meetings. But at this particular point in time, this is a stopgap measure on a short-term basis to plug the gap.
One other one that I've been looking for the answer, nobody seems to know it. Those of us that live in the Livonia area and have donated over the last 12 years to the Livonia ambulance service and actually paid for services, what happens to those ambulances in that building?
Okay, I don't know how their ambulance is.
That's a good question.
I think it's older than ours.
I don't know
But here,
anything
I
about
got an answer to it. I can give you what the law says, generally speaking. Livonia EMS, to my understanding, is a Texas nonprofit corporation. Also, to my understanding, they are tax exempt from franchise taxes in Texas. I don't know that that's correct, because I've heard that they let that lapse because they let their corporate status lapse at one time or another. May have corrected it, I don't know. You also have to be, and as far as the federal government, the state government is concerned, even if you incorporate as a nonprofit, you are for-profit as far as they are concerned until you file the paperwork, the 8283 or whatever it is with the IRS to get federally tax exempt under 501c3 or 4 or whatever they plug you into, and you file your form AP 204 with the controller's office. Okay? And so the bottom line is what state law says is a couple of things. Federal law, well, let's start with state law. State law says under the Texas Business Organizations Code now, Chapter 22, says basically if you wind up and you have excess funds or equipment or property left over, you need to give it to a like organization in the area. There is no like organization in the area unless they give it to Stockdale, ESD2, Floresville, or they, and I've had this happen before when fire departments collapse, they're selling it to Elkhart, Indiana. Okay? All right. So they are going to have to follow some laws. Whether they're going to follow those laws or not is a whole other story, because I've literally had people give away service body trucks to the guy who mows their lawn when they've collapsed as a fire department or an EMS department. All right? But the law says they got to give it to a like organization. The law also says once they liquidate all that stuff and they've got $1 million left over, they can redistribute that $1 million per capita to the 6 members that are there. It doesn't go back to the taxpayers. If we dissolve after we wind up, it goes back to the taxpayers on a per capita basis. So that's the other thing, you know, and the bottom line is, and I think you made a very good point, is that Livonia EMS or Stockdale EMS, when it was Stockdale EMS, or Livonia Fire Department has never paid for a thing. They have had your money run through their accounts, and then they wrote a check off their checking account. But whether it's donations, pancake sales, county money, indigent money, grants, it's all come from somewhere else. You know, them raising the money, it's come from you. So as far as I'm concerned, and I have this fight with fire departments and U.S. departments when they collapse, usually because it devolves down to just one family running it and nobody can be on it but them. But the point is that they can take that and run. Who's going to pursue them? The IRS will not. Probably won't. They don't even know. That's why the IRS is doing this now. I'm sorry I'm going into a big tangent here. But we have to, well, before there was an example